A policy of zero tolerance.
Michael Gray speaking earlier. We're taking you live to Lutterworth, climbing into the sky, a Vulcan bomber restored by the RAF. Jeff Mead, our defence correspondent, can take us through it. What an amazing sight, Jeff.
I don't know if you can hear me. We were deafened for the moment there by the roar of the 4 Olympus engines, which have taken, as you can see, that Vulcan bomber into the sky. It's a historic day here, the first time for 14 years that a Vulcan bomber has been airborne in Britain. Not since this aircraft, XH558, arrived here in 1993, has a sight like that been seen over the skies. It really is a huge day, not only for the people who've raised money here, and this has cost getting on for £6 million to restore that aircraft that you can see circling low over this Leicestershire airfield, but also I think it's a great day for the rest of us, really, because this will be something that Britain will see at air shows up and down the country from next spring. Let me bring in, I'm joined by Group Captain Andy Fryer, who's the commanding officer at RAF Waddington. Andy, this is not an RAF day, it's not even the RAF's plane anymore, but you must feel a great sense of pride and a degree of ownership today.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful day to be here to watch that aircraft flying again. As you say, it last flew from RAF Waddington. It was one of many RAF Vulcans in service through the Cold War. It now belongs to the Vulcan Operating Company, so it's not an RAF aircraft, as you say, but how marvellous to see it flying again today. Now,
you're former aircrew yourself. What would things be like on the flight deck there when we saw it take off? Would they, the crew, the 2 pilots and the engineer, have a sense of occasion, or would they be too busy?
Well, it is, of course, a very busy time for aircrew at that point, taking off. There's an awful lot of checks to be done, things to be watched, dials to be watched to make sure the aircraft's still safe. But I can't believe they wouldn't have had a bit of a skip in their heart as they went down that runway.
Why is it important? Why is it worth spending £6 million on? What's its significance to Britain?
Well, I think there's a couple of things I would say. The first is that the Vulcan was a very important part of our aviation history. If you look back to the Cold War, it carried the nuclear deterrent for the UK before it was moved to the Royal Navy. But also I think there's something special about the Vulcan. There's something it touches in people, along with perhaps a few other aircraft, the Spitfire I could think of and Concorde. But there's an emotional side to people's connection with this aircraft.
She's way off in the distance now, but we can still pick her up on our camera, I know. What's happening now? This is the test flight. What's the aircraft doing and what purpose does it serve?
Well, the first thing, of course, is this is the first time the aircraft's flown for 14 years, so there'll be an awful lot of systems to check out to make sure they're working. There'll be an awful lot of checks while the aircraft is on the ground, but there are certain things that you can't do until it's airborne. So they'll be doing that. They'll be making sure she flies okay, and a lot of other checks and such like. So they'll be very, very busy, but they'll be enjoying it as well, I'm sure.
And a few hundred people here, I guess a few hundred in the roads and villages around also, because it's something nobody will have seen for, 14 years?
Absolutely, and there's no mistaking the sound when she took off, was there? I mean, what a wonderful sound that was.
What about those who would argue that that's an awful lot of money to pay for an aircraft? It burns 40 tonnes of fuel an hour. It's not got exactly a light carbon footprint. There are better causes, whether that's medical research, whether it's charities. Why should we spend lottery money, £2.7 million, to restore the Vulcan to flying condition when there are plenty of them in museums?
Well, I think the point is this is a piece of aviation heritage. It's a British design. It's part of British and Royal Air Force history. And of course, at the end of the day, it's a charity, so it's up to people what they put their money into. But seeing it fly today, there's no doubt in my mind that this is money well spent by the public.
Do you get a sense of history? I mean, this is something, I guess, as an airman, you thought, well, we'll never see again. The days of an airborne Vulcan have gone.
Yes, absolutely. And certainly my heart skipped a beat as it went down there. And I'm sure yours did too.
I know there was a moment I didn't know whether we were going to talk to you because you were rather busy getting photographed. I can understand why.
Well, I had to take my own photographs, of course.
The great moment, I suppose, of the Vulcan, I mean, fortunately for us all, they were never called on to fulfil that function of delivering the ultimate deterrent. But I suppose the great moment for the Vulcan was 1982, when they actually flew this amazing mission to bomb the Argentinian-held Port Stanley airfield in the Falklands.
Yes, indeed. Isn't it ironic that right at the end of its service with the Royal Air Force was actually its finest hour, that most remarkable mission all the way from Ascension Island down to the Falklands for that mission. Quite extraordinary.
Andy, thank you very much for joining us. We leave you there with, if we can see in the very dim distance, she's way out of our view now, the the Vulcan still just in sight. She'll be airborne for about 20 minutes doing those sort of cockpit checks that Andy Fry was talking about. She'll be landing, we'll be talking to the pilot later on, and we'll be doing a lot more of this kind of check flying around here and over to RAF Waddington before she launches herself, makes her debut on the public air shows next spring, probably beginning with Biggin Hill. And I think you can sense from the occasion here in those pictures, there's no doubt who will be the star of those shows for the next 10 or 15 years of her flying life. It's a great day here. Back to you from Bruntingford.
Jeff, thank you very much indeed for that, and we'll just leave the Vulcan trailing off into the sky there. There's more on Sky.